we strung together 18, 33, 43. Our largest asset was 195 units. That was last year, our biggest one acquisition. But we've loved that 50, 40, 30 unit because we were flying kind of under the radar. Institutions aren't looking at those. They're arguing under 150, 200 units. They're not even looking at them. The private guy, for him to I call him the weekend warrior, he's working full time, but doing deals. Smart for him to do solo a 50 unit deal. So, that was a sweet spot for us. But to your question on the financing, it's very challenging. Lenders don't really understand the asset class so much. And then there's personal property, right? These aren't, those homes are, you get chattel financing. So the loan, it's like a car, right? As you get a title from the DMV. So it's a very unique asset class and very challenging to get financing.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only podcast presented by Accredited Life.
All right, Jason, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
Hey, Peter, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. How about we start with a introduction? Jason, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? All that good stuff.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Jason Postill, based out of Florida here. Got into real estate. I'll tell my full story, I'm sure, but a little bit quick about me. Proud father, 10-year-old daughter. No Christian. Had a background in professional baseball, so I didn't come from an Ivy League school or some fund management upbringing, but yeah, I got into commercial real estate about 10 years ago. Full time, just buying communities, mobile home parks is our specialty. Come from a multifamily apartment background on the brokerage side, but now we're staying busy buying communities, turning them around, and holding on for the long haul.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, there's a lot to discuss there. Now, did you say your introduction to real estate was on the commercial brokerage side, or?
It was, and I just touching back on my last season playing. It was actually like 10 years ago. I was my last season playing professional baseball, and I was in the minor leagues, and it was one of those. It was at a pro camp, and it was one of those talks where one of the big leaguers is letting the guys know, hey, this isn't going to last forever.
Right.
So if you get hurt, if this is last your season, you get released, that's going to happen. So don't get depressed. And so he played with the Tigers, and I heard him say something that really kind of got my mind shifted. And he said, I didn't even make my millions playing professional baseball. I made them owning thousands of apartment units in Detroit.
Wow.
I was like, this guy was, he didn't go to college. He wasn't the brainiac. And I was like, man, that's, and that kind of got me the wheels turning, because I didn't have family in the business. My father owned like one rental, and it was more of like nightmare stories. Oh, they stole the fridge, or they're not paying, that type of deal. So, yeah, that was what kind of shifted it. But I didn't really know where to start from there. So yes, the brokerage side is where I thought, oh, I'll get a license in the off season. And which, for your listeners, if they're looking to get into brokerage thinking that's the way in as investment, not at all, whatsoever. But it was a good route that I took to learn the business and the sales and the underwriting and everything. So yeah, that's how I got in.
Now, what made you think commercial? Was it because of the apartment thing there? I mean, so many people jump in on the residential side, and it takes years for them to think commercial's even approachable. I mean, a lot of times with agents I've talked to, what gave you the confidence to hop on that side of the business, kind of from ground zero, it sounds like?
I really think it goes back to just hearing that one guy, because a lot of times people think, oh, a huge corporation or owns this building, and it's really just a couple guys,
Yeah.
the syndication model. And I did actually get in on the residential side, which I quickly learned that wasn't it, because people were like, oh, I want to sell that unit. I'm just thinking the building. I'm just the whole time, just how do I sell the building? How do I buy? And that just got me asking the questions to then lead me, into the right spaces. And then I worked with Marcus Millichap and got more on the right circle of people doing what I was really trying to learn. So but yeah, I think it was just seeing it and then saying, wow, okay, that guy can do it. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, right? It's just following the leaders more at that point.
So, talk to me about the transition from, being an agent to being an owner. When did you make that leap? What was that like? And then, what were you doing? What you're doing today from an ownership perspective, or had you dabbled in something else beforehand?
Yeah, so the sales, eh, it I I don't love bringing it up, but it was part of the journey, because when in the playing baseball, it's 6 months out of the year, and in the minor leagues, you don't make a lot of money. Okay, you're pro, but I don't know if you know anything about, but you are not
Yeah,
making a lot of money
it's
unless
funny
you
you
get
said because our lead construction manager, his name's Brian Campbell. He was in the minors for years. I think he might have touched the mound for the Pittsburgh Pirates for a little bit, but blew his shoulder out. So I do actually know a little bit about it because he did it for years.
Yeah, and I mean, this was again 10 years ago, rookie ball. And again, you'll get a signing bonus. Some guys don't get a big signing bonus, but
Hmm.
everybody, no matter what you get, starting out then it was like 1250 or $1,500 a month, right?
Mm.
And that's only
Yeah.
6 months a year. So you are not making money. And so I was thinking, well, in the off season, maybe I can sell real estate. And um, then I hear people say, well, you need to be in business for 6 months to a year before you start making money. So that tell me wouldn't probably work if I'm going back to play baseball. And
Mm.
someone said, go sell timeshare. And I didn't even know what that was. But they said you just need a real estate license. And I
Okay.
was like, I didn't, so I had a very short stint learning some different sales and I quickly learned that, that the sales is great. I love, sales is great. We sell ourselves every day, right? With
Sure.
with everybody. But chasing that check and then having to go do it again, I quickly learned like I'm finding deals for these guys. I got to figure out to get on the other side.
Mhm.
You always work, you find great deals, and then okay, great. You get a commission check, and then you're off run to the next one instead of owning it, creating a more of a generational wealth,
Mhm.
which was, having my daughter, I'm just start thinking a little longer term. So that's where it kind of naturally just was like, yeah, well, I want to own the buildings, and that's where it shifted. Which not all agents, and which is fine. It's not,
Sure.
I've had people tell me I don't want the headaches. I don't want to own. I'd love to broker, and I don't have any liability with owning and headaches and tenants, and um, that's fine too. It just wasn't my
Mhm. Now, so what was it like making that initial leap? Was it into mobile homes, or when you went to the ownership side? Yeah, and was there a partnership there, or were you have mentors there, or how did you get into that and feel somewhat confident in the early days to take that leap? Because like you said, so many people don't do that for various reasons, and rightfully so for a lot of people. So
For sure, and not even knowing where to start, right? I read a million books, and then I did I was apartment broker, so I worked with a team out of Tampa. Had great mentors, like, they focused on and it was with Marcus Millichap, and they were a dominant apartment team out of Tampa, and that was great. And, I hear them and talk about stuff they own, and I'm like, "Okay," and that also kept sparking it, but
sure.
taking the leap, you're saying into the ownership side,
Yeah,
is that right?
yeah,
Or just
yeah.
other so I don't call it rare. Uh, so that I didn't really know where to start, right? I didn't know how to make that leap because my mentors then were just strictly sales. They wanted to keep me
Mhm.
focused, selling, selling, selling. So I was doing kind of side mastermind classes, more self education, and I stumbled upon a book that was apartment syndication. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, okay, I don't have $1 million yet to get started playing with, so this sounds like a good avenue to try to figure out further if I wanted to do this sooner than later. And so the leap came with I met my first investor on like a Bigger Pockets app, right?
Mhm.
Give them a plug.
Yeah,
But that was,
yeah.
a good uh start for me because he was having a hard time breaking into apartment brokers, right? Because a lot of apartment brokers, they have a book of guys they've been closing deals. So someone coming maybe from single family,
Sure.
they're like, I haven't closed a deal with you. Not saying it's
Yeah.
impossible, but I was young, hungry, and I was like, okay, wait, I got this guy with cash that would like to partner if I find a really good deal. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I heard a woman at a conference say if I find her a good apartment deal, she'll give me a piece of equity. I'm like, what?
Mm.
You guys are giving equity on? Like I had no clue what was
Mhm.
going on. So That's where it started becoming more like attainable, closer is. And so I took that leap into mobile home parks from apartments when I really just started studying all the asset classes and saying, okay, it's getting real now. Like, what's the safest, in my opinion,
Mm,
of all asset classes? I'm underwriting all these apartment deals with repairs, maintenance. I'm thinking, okay, well, wait, I can just own the dirt
mm.
and then and there was that also. So it
Yeah.
just and it took me about 18 months to once I really kind of had the pieces to then close that first deal. And then once we closed the first deal, 68 units, we have 4 partners in there, operators, myself on the deal, some 2 other
Mhm,
just passive investors, and then we just scaled it, to now over 1,000 units
mhm.
inside 4 years. It was
Yeah.
pretty
That's
big.
awesome. Well, let's talk about just kind of foundational from the mobile home parks. Like you said, you're leasing the ground. Because we've had some people on the show that invest in mobile home parks, but we never really the shows were dedicated to kind of other topics and things like that. So it was just kind of a blip on the radar. You know what I mean? Let's take a little bit of time to understand the asset class, explain it, what the benefits are. I mean, all that kind of stuff. What maybe some drawbacks, things like that. So let's just kind of go over mobile home parks 101.
Yeah, awesome. Love the topic. And it's it's a very unique asset class. So, and just to kind of break down here in Florida, and you'll see resort style, and they rate them on stars, right? So like 5-star being the best,
Yeah.
1-star being like the trailer park, meth den, horrible you hear about that
Yes.
gets a bad stigma.
Yeah.
Uh, which we're changing. That's really our mission is a lot of these cities, municipalities, if it's not that resort style RV park, those aren't affordable, right? Down here in Florida, I think
Sure.
lot rent I've seen up as high as $1,200 a month or something, like for lot rent, 800, 12. So we're actually in Arkansas,
Yeah.
and we buy very tough projects and rough areas too. I know that's the opposite of a lot of the business plan. Buy the worst property in the best area. Well, a lot of times we're buying some bad properties in some bad areas,
Mm,
but they're in the path of, in transition. And
yeah.
um what happens is the city will end up they'll want to just scrape it and have an A-class apartment developer put it up. Well, that's not
Mhm,
really solving the affordable housing crisis. So, our model is to buy some tough turnarounds. We sell the home off. So you'll hear RTOs, TOH, POH, right? Those are just acronyms for like a park-owned home,
mm,
which we don't want to turn this into a horizontal apartment complex. Okay, we
mm,
don't want to own these because then we're responsible for all that repair and maintenance.
mm,
One of the beautiful things about mobile home communities, if you have them turn it into the model that we do, where tenants own their own home, the residents buy that home, they own
mm,
it, they're just
mhm,
leasing the land, and then we're not responsible for any of that repair and maintenance. So
mm,
that's really our model, and it's tough when you take on park-owned home communities. It looks on paper you're making more money, right? But when you're repairing all the homes all the time, it's your
mm,
expense ratios high. But yeah, that's our model, and again, going back to just kind of studying during recessions, downturns, it's been one of the top performing asset classes across the board,
mm.
and the defaults too. Like when I was looking at just the defaults and loans that were out there, mobile home communities were very, very little.
Mm, mm. Well, let's talk about that side. So, from like a capital stack perspective, can you get financing to purchase a park, and or do you have to buy in cash and then put financing in at a certain point, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I had a talk last week with a gentleman, very experienced operator, and he was having it was a different market
Mm,
in Carolina, and somewhere in the Carolinas, and what what he was asking was, how are we getting finances on those small to mid deals? Because we build our portfolio, I say 1,000 units. We're not buying 200 unit communities. We are now looking at those, but we strung together 18, 33, 43. Our
mm,
largest asset was 195 units. That was last year, our biggest one acquisition. But we've loved that 50, 40, 30 unit because we were flying kind of under the radar. Institutions aren't looking at those. They're arguing for 150, 200 units. They're not even looking at it. The private guy, for him I call him the weekend warrior, he's working full time, but doing deals. It's hard for him to do solo a 50 unit deal. So, that was a sweet spot for us. But to your question on the financing, it's very challenging. Lenders don't really understand the asset class so much. And then there's personal property, right? These aren't, those homes are, you get chattel financing. So the loan, it's like a car, right? You get a title from the DMV. So it's a very unique asset class and very challenging to get financing. So what we had to do was, excuse me, go to local banks. And this is in Arkansas again. So it's a relationship at that point was, hey, once they saw the deposits for us, it was, okay, they like this. They see our business plan. They saw a couple projects, right? And our first deal was owner finance. So sometimes you might have to just get into one of those deals to kind of prove a concept.
Yeah.
And then once we built that track record, lenders, they saw it. Oh, okay, well, we want the deposits. If we give you deposits on 50 units every month, then we'll issue the loan, and we've seen you done this. So that's how we did it. And then we just did a CMBS loan. So we rolled it up into a portfolio loan with Bank of America, and they refied 500 of our units. So that was one way, but it has been challenging. I mean, I said that to the gentleman asked me, he goes, they don't care about how many deals I've done. They just won't lend on the space. So I don't want to say that's the one plan for all, because this gentleman, he's having to buy a lot of them cash. He's like, I'm running out of cash. Buying these. So, but I think enough, we hammered the phone. So for bank after bank after bank, and it was a no, we don't lend on mobile homes. And we're like, no, the land. And they're like, well, it was just those conversations. They weren't understanding it, so it took a while, but there's lenders out there. And now there's brokers. I mean, we've used some loan brokers that specialize in that asset class, and they built that Rolodex. So if someone's trying to break in that space, I mean, we go to these conferences, there's a lot of, half the guys I've met now were like debt and equity brokers.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So that's a good way if you're trying to source some good contact.
Yeah. How do you value the land? How does that work?
So the appraisals, that's where the appraisal gets tough, because clearly on the cash flow, that's how the evaluations come. And that's the beautiful thing of commercial real estate. That's how we can force that appreciation, right? We don't have to wait on in the market to just rise. So one thing the lenders do is they will take the lot rent. They will use that income, which if you're a park-owned home, let's say you own the home and you rent it for $1,000. Well, the lot rent might only be $400. So if that's your model, you're looking at a lot more income on paper, right? 50 units on 1,000, that's 50,000 opposed to $400 lot rent. That's a significant discount. So for us, it's not as big of a challenge with that underwrite, because that's how we underwrite it anyway. Some of these guys, you see brokers, and there was a point I didn't pay attention. I'm thinking, well, that's income. I wasn't even thinking about it. But then when I took it to the bank, I realized they weren't using all that additional income. So it was important to understand, okay, well, even if we take on a park-owned community with a lot more income, we cannot count that. And so they value that land. They'll do appraisal on land only, but then they do count the lot rent income on top of that we lease. And that gives it a higher, we haven't had too many problems with appraisals, because usually it's the guys that are in the space doing it, the Colliers, the CBREs, the bigger groups that are more experienced in the asset class. But yeah, it's definitely it's a little trick. As simple as it is, it's a trailer park, we lease it. It's a tricky asset.
Oh yeah, definitely. But how does what's the cap rates look like then? And I'm assuming it varies depending on the, like you said, the lower end of the spectrum versus more of the luxury end. But what's the range look like?
Yeah, so I know, and there's numerous ways to look at it, right? So a price per pad, that's not the end all be all because the income, right, which comes down to the cap rate. We're in rougher areas, so we do want a higher cap rate, whether
Yeah.
that's on the low end, 7, 8, 9% getting
Yeah.
into the deal.
Mhm.
Eh, but our cash on cash is the most important. So if we're not seeing that 12 to 14% cash on cash by like year 2, 3,
Yeah.
with a very moderate rent increase, then we'd probably pass on the deal. Because we bought 6 caps. I mean, we just bought a deal. We closed last week on 58 units. It was 1.3 million. It was 22 a pad. It was occupied, 52 out of 58. They only have $220 lot rent. So that cap rate day one I think it was like a 7 cap, but the market lot rent is almost 400. So
Mm.
it's effectively, you go, we don't do that day one, just go
Sure.
to 4, I'll skin them alive. But my point is, we might buy a 6 cap that is really an 8 or 9 cap in the first 90 days because just the rent alone is so much lower than
Mhm.
the market.
Yeah.
But if you're buying in LA or Miami, I mean, you're buying 4.5 cap. Still, it's crazy. I don't understand. I still don't get it because debt's 7, 8, 9%, and we're still seeing 4.5, 5 caps in some of those markets. So I don't know how those guys are doing it, but good for them. I think they're banking on, who knows,
Yeah.
appreciation. I don't know, but
And you said that your model is to kind of transition the community from owning the actual mobile homes and receiving rent on those to just purely getting the lot rent. Is that correct?
that's correct.
What does that
That
process look like? What does that entail?
and there is one other model we do when we're transitioning it. It's called rent to own, like an RTO. You'll see
Right.
like a rent to own. And what that does is that will give us that additional income. So if that park, excuse me, is getting $1,000 a month as a park owned home, the transition is usually really bad. Just to be frank, like for some reason we still can't even figure this out. We could say happy birthday and a Merry Christmas. Here's you own your home for free,
Mhm.
and now you're only paying X amount less. And some of the residents will straight like they don't want to own anything. They'll just leave. They'll just I don't want to own. We still aren't really clear on why that happens sometimes. And sometimes in Florida, we're not again in Florida, but I've heard great stories like, oh, they'll pay cash 40 grand a home, and we don't have that tenant base. So our transition usually we've now found a couple better ways than just saying you have to buy your home because that didn't work. I mean, when we forced the home, you got to put it down. Half the community left in one park, and luckily me and one other part we owned it. We didn't have other investors, but 50% went. It was a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
Literally, the worst thing could have been 100% fake.
Yeah.
Fake,
Sure.
But that was bad, and we learned through that. It's like, okay, let's give some options here. Let's just say, okay, worst case, you keep keep it as a rental, and they'll eventually with the no pay, no stay policy, and we give them till the 5th to pay. If they don't, they get a fee, a late fee, and then by the 15th, we're issuing a eviction.
Mm.
So, and they'll usually pay or they leave. So then at that point, we turn it into a rent to own, which low money down. It's like $1,000 a month, and we'll get maybe 8 or 900 a month, and that's the additional yield that we'll have. And then they own the home still at that point, right? So they don't. It goes back to the repairs and maintenance. We just want to offload all that repair maintenance. So the rent to own is a good way to keep a little more income coming, and then reduce that or eliminate the expense on that home.
And how long does that process typically take?
I mean, 90 days. We if it's that one example is 33 homes. So again, like 15 people left. That was like a 6-month ordeal of just. Luckily, we bought it such a good price. We bought we weren't like bleeding out in debt service or other repair. Like we were afloat, but it was it was painful.
Yeah.
But it's we can turn 90 days. We pass out letters, options, give them different lease option contracts, and 90 days is a good window to kind of get that implemented, and we see who kind of weeds out.
Mhm.
But it's definitely once they own the home though, they're there average like 14 years. Like they do not leave.
Wow.
That's the beautiful thing, is just the retention
Yeah.
is so
Is
much.
there bylaws like to the community? Is it like an HOA? Like, do you have things that they can and can't do from a, I mean, what they could put on the house, or what they could put outside, or anything like that, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so we enforce some pretty strict community rules, because we've had instances where, I mean, one guy, we've evicted people on where they were like they were going to the bank. At one point, we were having them take checks to the bank. That was not, we have a whole different system now. That was a
Hmm.
nightmare situation. But they were literally depositing the check, but we were evicting them on community rules. They were running a scrap metal business, so
Hmm.
their house looked like
I can
garbage.
imagine.
It
Yeah.
literally was.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
scrap metal. We didn't know, but then we found out he was making a lot of money, and he had all this scrap, and we just kept telling him, like, you gotta, you can't have this, right? They're skirting on the side, right? The skirting that covers
Mm.
the bottom of the home, and
Mhm.
that needs to be in place, right? Because we're trying to turn these around and make them a nice place for people to live, and not have mold on the side. So there's vicious breeds of animals are insured. So there's
Mm.
and there's a community rules that we can evict them just on not complying with, even if they're paying, right? I think where we're at, it's easier to have a successful eviction off non-payment than maybe some others. But yeah, I mean, drug activity. I mean, all we have there's a lot of, I mean, even just cars, vacant cars that are parked in
Mhm.
the yard with no
Yeah.
wheels on it. Just it's just we have some rules where if they don't, we'll give them a violation fee, and if they get four of the same ones, then they're evicted. So they sign that lease saying,
Mhm.
this happens, boom, 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 four times, then they know they're gone. So
Mhm.
that helps for
Yeah.
sure.
What is the what's the acquisitions process look like for you guys? Are you I mean, coming from the brokerage world, I'm not sure how do you do that? You have somebody in house calling and smile dial kind of thing, or you send in postcards and things like that? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's where I'm we're operating. So I have a business partner. It's the two of us. We run an MHCI group, and
Mhm.
I'm there's so much overlap, right? In the company, especially when you're starting up. We're 5 years in now, but there's still, like, we're hiring. We only have probably 8 total employees throughout the whole deal, and that's more on the property management side, because we vertically integrate and built that. So
Okay, that
I'm
was
more
gonna be
the
my next
acquisition.
question.
Yeah, so yeah, and I don't want to get too sideways. I want to stay focused on that question, because that's a whole nother business that doesn't, property management doesn't know we really are private equity, right? It's two completely different
Mhm.
companies. But I, coming from the brokers, that was kind of my big value add, was acquisitions. I source the deals. I would essentially cold call,
Mm.
prospect all the deals, cold call, hook the appointment for a business partner who's on the ground there. Because Arkansas is kind of good boys club. They
Mhm.
don't want to hear from a guy in Florida, New York, Texas. They want to meet you face to face. So even though I could get on the phones, negotiate, hook a meeting, and I'd fly in town, I still go there a handful times a year. But um, it was really me and a business partner, just me on the acquisitions, cold calling, him meeting, then we just put the deal together. But we did build an acquisitions team, virtually. That hasn't been dialed in, quite frankly, is good. I mean, we're working on that, but we're now at the point where we do have great relationships where deals come at us, because they see we're
Mhm.
the largest owner of communities in the state of Arkansas. So
Mm.
we get deal flow coming at us, because they know, we have a track record now of closing. But yeah, I mean, that was really how we built the first 10 parks, was just calling down the block,
Yeah.
mailers, mixed in some mailers, just using our brokerage resources, and just calling down the block. We bought a deal. Hey, we're your new neighbors. We own. Would you be interested in offer? Very
Mhm.
simple, just meeting. Oh, okay, not yet. When you're ready to sell, we're here for a while, God willing, and
Yeah.
we'll like to meet you when we're in town. And that's really how it spread.
Yeah.
Uh,
What
but
what brought you to Arkansas? What was it about the state and the area, and what brought you there?
Yeah, I get that question a lot because you're in Florida. What are you doing in Arkansas? And honestly, it started out as the barrier to entry just
Mm.
in Florida started out just honestly couldn't compete. I mean,
Yeah.
when I met my business partner, it was he owned a park in Florida. And I actually called him before I owned anything on the broker side, and he didn't know who I was like, who the F is he hung up on me. That was a
Mm.
money story in itself. And I called him back. I was like, I didn't even get out what I wanted to say. So we ended up meeting and had very similar goals as far as what we were trying to do. And once we met and started pursuing more deals, this was in 2017, 18. I mean, guys were putting $100,000 non-refundable day one sight unseen.
Mm.
And we're just like, what, 4.5 cab? We just could not make sense of it. And so we were talking to some other people and they're like, you know what? Arkansas is kind of an underserved market. And we started looking into Little Rock, I
Mm.
mean, 700,000. It was a big metro, home of Walmart. You know, the Walton family
Yeah.
pouring a lot of money into that state. They're actually putting like 300 million into the town we just bought in on biking trails in the
Yeah.
next 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Yeah.
stuff like that, we started realizing, okay, it's a little sleeper. And then Fayetteville's more of a sexy competitive market now. Fayetteville,
Mm.
West Arkansas. But yeah, it was honestly short answer was barrier to entry was much lower. People weren't then, at least, 5 years ago, I was calling these guys, nobody was ever calling them.
Mm.
Like, nobody was ever calling these guys. It was coming
No.
from Florida apartment brokerage where they're
Yeah.
getting hammered all day,
Yeah.
every day.
Exactly. It's just
Right.
relentless. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, the reason I asked too is I had somebody else on the show who was investing a lot in Arkansas and some of those areas, and was speaking to what you're talking about with the bike trails and just all these things that were happening that were very, very positive and looking very good for the future there. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that property management side. So how are you setting that up, and who's doing that? Interface with the residents and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that was something I never thought because I hate property management.
Mm.
Yeah, it's the lifeblood of the business. So
Sure.
I've learned to love it because that's part of it. And without that business dies, and to put that in someone else's hands, third party that has no interest and they up and leave, it was really good to understand that. Because coming from the apartment world, if I was apartment syndicator or owner investor, I would be third party management all day. Still to this day, if I buy a apartment company, I'm going to use third party management. I have no interest in building a property management company, and it's so. But for us in the mobile homeland, there's I'm not saying there's none out there. There's some property management companies. I'm sure some would do it. The fees are much higher,
Mm.
rightfully so, because even from a business standpoint, if you look at if you're in business to make money, and if you have 50 units, one is getting $300 lot rent and the other 50 unit building's getting $2,000 apartment rent per unit. It's just like you're getting gross percentage off those. So which one
Yeah.
are you choosing? Right? It's just there's not a lot of them out there. And if they are, they're more expensive. So for us, it was just we and not to be control freaks, but we definitely wanted to have control. Like, we're raising money, our investors' money, our personal money. Like, we wanted to know everything that was going on, from paying contractors to collecting rent to transitioning that. If something breaks in our system, we don't want to wait a week for the tech. We wanted to understand every single piece of that. So we built that from the ground up, and again, my business partner on the ground there, he's operations. He manages more the construction side
Mm.
of, managing your contractors, setting up those crews to do the renovations. It's an overlap on, I have some interviews today for a new on-site manager.
Mm.
We finally now have a person that we use a couple virtual assistants, but we need warm bodies on the ground.
Mhm.
So,
Sure.
they huddle up on meetings. We use Rent Manager, which is a great system that does everything we need for property management. So, there's definitely been a lot of growing pains figuring that out, but it's been good because, again, having the not so much control, but just the kind of wherewithal of, okay, if something breaks, like, we just don't have 1,000 units that we got to go now find somebody to figure it out for us. We could get in there, and understand and collect payments without having a manager. We got rid of cash and check. There's no changing of money in hands with managers,
Yeah.
which is that's standard for apartments, right? It's like,
Sure.
yeah, okay, of course, but in mobile home park, like it's a cash business. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah.
it's so that takes some time, but it was good. I mean, we're glad we did that. It's not a profit center for us, because we do. I mean, we should just charge it a little more. We charge a 5% management fee just to cover our costs and call center and just resources, right? But but we're also invested in these deals, and our investors get better returns. We get better returns if we can just cover the costs. It's not something we do like third party. We get asked all the time. We're like, absolutely not. We don't third party manage.
Sure.
We consider for equity, right? We're equity guys. We want to be partners. But yeah, we are not like a third party property. But it's a beautiful business if you're in that focusing to try to make it a profitable business and scale the and
Yeah.
what asset class you're looking for. So nothing wrong with property management as a business. It's just not our
Yeah.
focus.
Well, talk to me about how you work with investors. You had mentioned you having some 506 style funds, B and C, that kind of thing. So whatever you can, speak to, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So our first deal was owner finance. We did do a 506B. It was just very few. It was $1,070,000, very small deal. We did come in with 50% of that deal, even as an owner finance. A lot of times the beautiful thing of an owner finance is lower money down. You can negotiate terms, but we ended up doing a 506B on that just because we had a 401k conversion and just it was a different structure for the couple investors we did have. But we've done joint ventures where we've had other partners and like operational partners, but what we've gravitated to now just at scale, because we invest in every deal, but then again, we have some active income, but capital runs out. That's why we go raise it. Excuse me. So we've now focused more on the 506C, where we can, since we have a little track record now, we can promote it and solicit, and advertise our past returns, our deals, etc. But we still mix in like a 506B. So we had just this last deal, it was another smaller deal, but we've had some investors that weren't accredited in the past. Like I had contact, he sold a business a long time ago and he didn't make money for a while. Well, he just got back into business. He made 400 grand last year, but it did check the box as accredited, right? He had 1 year, he didn't have a couple years. So he was unaccredited from the legal side of it. And so he was able to invest because we did a 506B. We didn't solicit it. It was just a few of our investors that we even just had a refi and wanted to just roll it back in, right? They had a nice refi event, and so we'll mix in those. But yeah, at scale, we don't have a fund yet. That's something we're looking at too, that we knew early on.
You've just been doing individual deals around a certain park.
Exactly. A single asset syndication is basically what we've done. And we knew early on, not saying it was impossible, it's just doing a blind pool, having a fund without a track record. They'd say, well, what have you done? Just throwing money into what? So now we are looking at a fund where, again, our tracker, we're focusing on mobile home parks. We're not getting sideways and car washes and these other great asset class. Oh no, and those are great. I love them.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean there. Yeah.
They're great. I mean, there's so many, and it's hard not to. We looked at self-storage. We're like, all right, let's just stay in our lane for a while. Like, let's just focus. So that's going to be the focus for the foreseeable future. And we want to get to 10,000 of these.
Okay,
units.
that was going to be my other question. Was what did you see? What do you see as like the goal and the vision moving forward and all? So that's awesome.
Yeah, and we're buy and hold guys. Really not saying we would never sell, right? But we haven't to this day. Some partnerships we've bought out, and we have actually one small deal that we are considering selling just because of partnership. But overall, our long-term goal has maybe hurt us on the capital raise side, because a lot of, especially private equity, corrupted him, and they want that 3 to 5 year exit.
Sure.
They want that 2x and 5, and they don't care anything else. They want to exit, and so we've actually probably lost on. I know we have, because we've talked to them and they say, we
Well, yeah.
check for as many deals as you could bring us, but we don't want to just cave into their business plan when and there's some other investors, they're long-term guys too. They say, we love that long vision. We're creating that. But again, not saying we would never sell, but our long-term goal to get to 10,000, we're not flipping here. It would have to take a nice sale to then catapult us maybe into a larger portfolio, something along those lines. But yeah, that's our goal. And so pretty lofty, but we're little by little.
Yeah,
We're getting.
that's awesome. I love the long-term perspective and the buy and hold perspective. Well, Jason, this has been an amazing conversation. Really good information throughout. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. For the audience, and if they want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about what you're doing, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, we're our little office called mhcigroup.com, right? So that's Manufactured Housing Community Investment Group. It's a mouthful, so we just trimmed it up. That's where you can keep up with us, see our deals, and I'm on LinkedIn. We're trying to get a little more content out just to educate on this asset class. There's a lot of guys in this space now, but we're on LinkedIn, Jason Postill, and we're always on it. So.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Peter, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.